For centuries, knowledge has been hidden in plain sight across the sands of time. Whispers of lost civilizations, cryptic symbols, and forbidden histories have been erased or concealed. What if the truth was never lost, but hidden? Welcome to Eye of Ancient Mysteries, where the past speaks and the future listens. Sit back, open your mind, and prepare to uncover the untold secrets of our world. Let the journey begin now. The blacksmith from 1821, who appeared in 1960-80, coincidence or a secret Soviet experiment? The legend. It is rumored that in 1968, a strange event occurred in a village near Veliki Novgorod, an event shrouded in mystery and doubts. Locals whispered about it for years, but no official records mentioned the incident, and scientists, as usual, shrugged it off, calling it a collective delusion or even a prank. However, rumors don't easily disappear, especially when they've taken root in the collective memory of a small village. It is said that it all began on a warm July evening when a peculiar man arrived in the village. The village at that time had very few inhabitants, mostly elderly people. The stranger looked very unusual. His clothes appeared to be from the 19th century, patched as though from a fair. Bare, cracked feet, a wide shirt with lace, and trousers made of rough cloth, tied with a piece of rope. At first, the villagers thought he might be a lost actor or some eccentric tourist. But when he spoke, things began to take a strange turn. He introduced himself simply as the blacksmith, not by his surname or first name, just the blacksmith, as though it were perfectly obvious. He claimed to live nearby, his forge was across the river, and he had gone into the forest to collect herbs for ointment. But the strange thing was, there hadn't been a forge in the village for over 100 years. The younger villagers stared at him in confusion, but the old ones froze. The name he gave was familiar to them, so much so that one elderly woman even gasped and grabbed her chest, for there had once been a blacksmith in her family with that name. But he had lived a long time ago, so long ago that even the oldest villagers weren't alive back then. Meanwhile, the blacksmith wandered through the village, confused, pointing at houses and asking where his friend Yegorka was, whose son Grishka was, and what the new sheds were all about. He even mentioned that the spot where a certain house stood was once the site of a well, and that strange wagons without horses were parked along the street. The villagers first thought he was drunk, but there was no sign of alcohol. He spoke clearly, confidently, with no sign of drunkenness or delirium, so they thought maybe he was ill. But he appeared to be in good health, just lost. Some began to speculate that he might be an old man, one of the older generations who had been called up for war and then disappeared in captivity, only to return many years later. But that didn't fit either. He looked to be about 30, not 70, as the missing blacksmith would have been if that theory were true. And then the truly strange things began. The blacksmith described who lived where, who had married whom, and who had died in what year, and everything matched. But it matched not with the present, but with the village's history from over a century ago. Where did he live? They asked him. Right here, he said, pointing to an empty patch of land. When they checked, it turned out that, according to old records, a house had once stood there, but it had burned down over a century ago. They then took him to the collective farm's chairman. The chairman looked at him and asked for documents. The blacksmith seemed confused and shrugged, saying, "Documents? What nonsense are you talking about? I live here." And then he simply vanished. Not in the middle of the night, not in some secluded place, and not in a way that would suggest he ran off. No, he was standing by the well, talking to an elderly woman, when suddenly he was gone. The woman crossed herself, spilled some water, and didn't speak to anyone for the next week. They tried searching for him. Well, it's hard to search for a man who might have never existed. They called the police, who shrugged it off, spun a finger near their head, and left. Years passed, and what's strange is that no one seemed to remember his name. They remembered his surname, yes, but his first name, maybe Ivan, maybe Nikolai. It seemed familiar, but no one could say for sure. Scientists, of course, dismissed it all. They claimed it was a collective hallucination, a hoax, or maybe a traveling actor putting on a show. But the locals were adamant he had been there. He had been. But what really happened? No one knows for sure. The most interesting part came when people began recalling that the Soviet Union wasn't just launching rockets into space. Rumor has it there were secret experiments that were never reported in the newspapers. Whispers of secret laboratories, time travel experiments, and disappearances that were never recorded in any archives. And the timing was significant. The Cold War, the arms race, the search for anything that could provide an advantage. What if the blacksmith was an unfortunate result of some failed experiment, or perhaps a successful one that was eventually covered up? Rumor has it that there was indeed a laboratory near Novgorod in the late 60s. Officially, it was a geophysical station studying seismic activity, but locals kept their distance from it. They claimed strange things happened there, noises at night, flashes of light, and sometimes the air seemed to tremble as if above a hot plate. The blacksmith's appearance coincided with the moment when the station was abruptly shut down. One day, trucks arrived, packed up the equipment, and the staff was taken away in an unknown direction. None of the workers ever reappeared in those parts. What were they studying? Officially, there are no records, only speculation. Some say they were trying to create artificial space-time rifts. Others think they were experimenting with electromagnetic fields that altered the perception of time. And the most daring theories delve into the realm of science fiction. There are whispers that the Soviet Union had groups dedicated to conversations with time, attempting to peer into the past or future, to somehow influence them. And then the real mystery. If the blacksmith did indeed fall out of 1821 into 1968, why was he in that specific place? Why not Moscow or Leningrad or Siberia? Why in that exact village where he had once lived? One theory is that such breaks in time are location bound. That is, When a rupture happens, it pulls a person not just anywhere, but to the exact place, albeit at a different moment in time. Or perhaps everything is the other way around. What if the rupture wasn't a random event, but something deliberately created, and the blacksmith was the result of an experiment we may never fully understand? Science, of course, denies all of this. They say it's impossible for a person to just slip through time like that. No documents, no official experiments. But has science ever told the whole truth about such things? And the strangest part came years later. The village wasn't large, and everyone knew each other. One of the women, the same one who had spoken to the blacksmith by the well before he disappeared, recalled one eerie detail. She dug through old church books she had at home. Records were kept by the church before the Revolution, and among the yellowing pages she found the surname of the very same blacksmith. And what was truly unsettling was the date of his death. At first they thought it was a mistake. After all, mistakes happen. But as more people started asking questions, searching through old papers, and speaking to the oldest villagers, something strange came to light. The blacksmith, the very one who appeared in 1968 and knew everything about the village from over a century ago, had indeed existed. He had worked in the forge, had a wife, children. Everything was as it should have been. But the date of his death was written as 1821, and here's where it gets even more unsettling. It's said that the blacksmith disappeared on the very same day he appeared in 1968. He left his house and was never seen again. His wife searched, his children searched, and neighbors combed the forests. The river was full that year, and they thought maybe he had drowned, but no body was ever found. He simply vanished. The church book records say, missing, presumed dead. And if that's true, if it's not just some absurd village legend, it means he didn't just slip through time. He lived his life in 1821 and then stepped into 1968. On the same exact day, but 147 years later. Where did he go after that? Why? Maybe the time loop closed. Maybe he returned to the same moment he disappeared, and for the people of 1821, it seemed as though he had simply vanished. Or maybe he was simply erased. Some suggest it was a trial experiment. Maybe someone was testing whether a person could be moved through time, and the blacksmith was an accidental or deliberate victim. But if that's the case, who was conducting this experiment? Some say the KGB archives contain documents mentioning instances of sudden disappearances of people in the 19th century and their later appearances in the 20th. Rumor has it that a group of scientists working under the Soviet government was behind it. But there's another theory. What if this wasn't an experiment at all? What if time rifts are a natural, though rare, phenomenon, and the Soviet Union was simply trying to find and harness them? Or maybe the blacksmith wasn't the first. What if there were others like him, but no one ever knew about them? After the Tunguska meteorite fell in 1908, a strange woman arrived in a Siberian settlement. The morning was unusual. The sun barely showing itself on the horizon, illuminated the sky with a strange golden-green glow. The elders in the village shook their heads, the women crossed themselves, and the Evenki hunters, meeting near the outskirts, quietly spoke to each other in their language, glancing toward the east. Suddenly, the air was shaken by a deafening roar. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and within moments a fiery pillar soared above the taiga, reaching what seemed like the very heavens. Yegor Stepanovich Nikitin, the village elder, rushed out of his house and froze on the porch. People poured out of their homes across the village, pointing at the glow over the distant forests. "Lord have mercy, the end of the world has come," wailed Agafia, the elder's wife. "Quiet now," Yegor Stepanovich scolded her. "Don't scare the people. Maybe it's some kind of special thunderstorm, or—" He fell silent, not knowing how to explain what had been seen. It seemed like some kind of apocalypse. In the following days, various rumors spread around the village. Some spoke of divine wrath, others of the devil's machinations. The hunters returning from the taiga told of fallen trees, stretching for miles and strange ash covering the ground. A shaman from a neighboring Evenki settlement predicted great changes. But life went on. People had to prepare for haymaking, tend to the cattle, and get ready for the summer fair in the district town. Gradually, the talks of the heavenly fire began to fade. She arrived in Mikhailivka 3 weeks after that fateful morning, a tall, slender woman in strange clothes resembling a man's suit, but with an untraceable, unique cut. Her light, almost silver hair was braided in a way never seen before in these parts. But what struck the most were her eyes, unnaturally large, deep, with a purple tint that changed depending on the lighting. The stranger entered the village from the river, where there was no road. She walked with firm, assured steps, holding a small silver chest. Fyodor Lukich, the local blacksmith, was the first to notice the stranger and called out to her, "Hey, miss!" "Who are you? Where are you coming from?" The woman stopped and looked at him with her amazing eyes. After a brief pause, she answered, "My name is Aya. I'm from far away, very far away." Her voice sounded unusual, with melodic intonations Fyodor had never heard before. "And what's your last name?" "Just Aya," she smiled. "Can I stay in your village? I need time." Fyodor scratched his head. The stranger didn't look like a fugitive convict, but she also didn't seem like a lady from a wealthy family. In any case, it wasn't his place to decide. "You need to see the elder, Yegor Stepanovich. His house is the one with the carved window frames." Yegor Stepanovich carefully looked the stranger up and down. "So you say your name is Aya. Do you have any papers? A passport, travel permit?" "No," the woman shook her head. "Everything is lost. I got into trouble, lost everything I had." "I see," the elder drawled. "And what brought you to our backwater?" "Fate," Aya answered simply. "I can be useful. I know how to heal people." At that moment, a child's harsh cough, turning into a wheeze, came from the neighboring room. Venyusha, Agafia, the elder's wife, said quietly, peeking around her husband's shoulder, has been burning with fever for 3 weeks. A doctor from the town came, but just shrugged his shoulders. Aya turned her gaze to the woman. "May I see the child?" Agafia glanced questioningly at her husband. He nodded reluctantly. "Look if you can. But if anything goes wrong, you'll be responsible." The villagers looked at the strange woman with distrust. "She's a witch," said Feklisha, the old maid with a sharp tongue. "Those eyes aren't human, and her hair. She's probably dealing with the devil." "Don't talk nonsense," interrupted Prochor the hunter. "If it weren't for her, I'd be lying in the grave now. She does nothing but good. You only like to gossip. Did you notice how she looks at the sky at night?" Feklisha persisted, always searching for something, and sometimes she talks to herself in an unknown language. You'll see she'll bring misfortune to us. One evening, when the first stars were lighting up the darkening sky, Aya sat by the river, looking into the distance. Little Vanya, who had become very attached to her, sat next to her. "What do you see up there, in the sky?" the boy asked, following her gaze. Aya smiled. "Stars, Vanya, billions of stars, and around each one planets are circling, like your Earth orbits the sun." "Are there people on those planets too?" "On some of them, yes," she nodded. "But they may not look like you." "How do they look?" "Different. Some look like people, others are completely different." The boy thought for a moment and then asked, "Have you seen them?" Aya was silent for a long time before answering, "Yes, Vanya, I have seen many worlds." "You're not from here, are you?" The boy looked at her with his clear eyes. "You fell from the sky when that terrible thunder happened. I can see you're not ordinary." "And beautiful." Aya turned to him, and in her violet eyes the stars reflected. "What would you say if that were true?" "I'd ask you to take me with you when you leave for your home," the boy said seriously. Aya laughed, but her laughter sounded sad. "It's very far, Vanya, and very dangerous. You'd better stay here with your parents." "So it's true," the boy insisted. "You're from another planet." "It's our secret, okay?" She pressed a finger to her lips. Vanya solemnly nodded, but he couldn't keep the secret for long. A few days later, new rumors began to spread through the village. Some laughed at the boy's fantasy, others shook their heads, and some seriously began to think about it. That evening, the most respected villagers gathered in the elder's house: the blacksmith Fyodor, the miller Tikhon, the hunter Prochor, and Yegor Stepanovich himself. Agafia served tea with honey, and then the men began to speak. "What do you think of our guest, Yegor?" Fyodor asked directly. The elder stroked his beard thoughtfully. "She's strange, that's true. But she's not doing harm, quite the opposite. She saved Venyusha from death. I gave my word that no one will harm her." "What if she's not really human?" Tikhon asked quietly. "Old women's tales." Fyodor waved his hand. "Although—" He fell silent, remembering the strange instruments in Aya's silver chest. "I've been watching her," Prochor confessed. "She often goes into the forest, east of the village, always alone, and she carries that chest with her. Maybe she's gathering herbs, suggested Yegor Stepanovich, for her medicines. Maybe so. The hunter nodded. But one day I saw her take something out of her chest that looked like a small mirror, only it was glowing with different lights, and she was saying something into it, in a foreign language. The men exchanged glances. The silence was broken by Fedor's voice. We should talk to her openly. No secrets. If she's a spy, she should admit it. The next day, Igor Stepanovich invited Aya to his house. The same men who were there the day before gathered. Aya entered, gave them a calm look, and sat on the chair that was offered to her. "We want to ask you a few questions," began the village head, "and we ask you to answer honestly." "I'm listening," she simply replied. "Where are you really from?" asked Fedor. "Don't say some city. We all see that you're different. You're from far away." Aya looked at them for a long time, as if making a decision. Then she sighed. "You're right. I'm not from here. I came from far away, from the sky," asked Prokhor directly. "You could say so." Aya nodded. "I'm from another planet that orbits a star you call Vega. It's in the Lyra constellation." The men froze, not knowing how to react to such an overwhelming admission. What are you saying? What other stars?" "God created us here," Tekon finally managed to say. "In my language we're called Aldari," Aya replied. "We are an ancient civilization studying other worlds. I do not oppose your God, but I follow a different faith, if you can call it that. And how come you look so much like a human if God didn't create you?" asked Igor Stepanovich. Aya smiled. "Not all differences are visible to the eye. But our species is indeed similar. That's not so rare in the universe. Life often chooses similar paths of development." "So what are you doing in our village?" Fedor frowned. "I'm waiting for salvation," she answered simply. "I sent a signal, but the nearest ship of ours is very far away. It will take time to reach here." "How much time?" asked Prokhor. "By your calendar, a few months." The men exchanged glances. Igor Stepanovich cleared his throat. "Well, as long as you haven't harmed anyone. On the contrary, you can stay if you wish. Whether you're a foreigner or an African, it doesn't matter to us. As long as you keep to yourself, no one will harm you here." Aya nodded in gratitude. "Thank you. I would like to repay your hospitality in the following weeks." Life in Mikhailovka changed. In the evenings, people gathered at Matryona's house, where Aya lived, to listen to her stories about distant worlds. Though they didn't believe it, they listened to her stories with rapt attention. She spoke of planets where oceans were made of liquid methane, worlds with 3 suns, planets boiling with lava, and those covered in eternal ice. She told them about civilizations that had reached such heights in science and technology that their abilities seemed like magic, about creatures living in the depths of space, intelligent crystals, and planets that were minds themselves. The children listened, mouths agape, women gasped, and the men asked questions, to which Aya patiently responded, "Why don't you show us some of your technologies?" One day asked young Meteor, the miller's son. "Something?"
Incredible.
Aya shook her head. "We have a strict law, not to interfere in the development of other civilizations. I've already broken many rules by confessing this to you. But I cannot show technologies that could alter the natural course of your history. But you did heal us with your devices," noted the village head. "That's different," she answered. "I saved lives, and I did so in a way that you couldn't understand the principles behind the devices. Moreover," she smiled, "I disguised my actions as ordinary herbal remedies." "Tell us more about your world," asked Agafia. "How do you live there?" Aya began to tell about her home planet Aldar, about the blue forests and purple oceans, about cities floating in the air, about how her people long ago abandoned war and dedicated themselves to exploring the universe. Many listened with skepticism, but even the most hardened skeptics couldn't completely deny her words. Aja herself was too unusual, with her strange eyes and incomprehensible devices. One evening, when Aya was sitting with Vanya by the riverbank, showing him the constellations, the boy asked, "Aja, why did you tell the truth? You could have kept pretending." Aya looked thoughtfully at the stars. The day before the appointed time, she gathered all the villagers at the headman's house. "I want to thank you for your shelter and kindness," she began. "You accepted me, a stranger, and allowed me to become part of your lives. This means a lot to me." "But you've done good as well," replied Fedor. "You've healed many, helped many. I must warn you," Aya continued. "Tomorrow night you may see strange lights in the sky. Don't be afraid, and please stay inside your houses. For your safety, can we watch you leave?" asked the boy. Aya shook her head. "I'm sorry, but no. My people must not see you, and it's safer for you not to witness their technology. It would be better if you remember me simply as a wanderer who stayed among you for a while." "But we know the truth," Igor Stepanovich smiled, "and our children will tell their children the story of the woman from the stars. If you wish." Aya smiled. That evening, many came to say goodbye to her personally. She found kind words for each one, leaving something as a memento, some medicinal herbs gathered from the taiga for one, a pattern drawn on paper for another, or just advice. Little Vanya didn't leave her side, tightly holding the crystal she had given him. "Will you come back someday?" he asked. "I don't know, Vanya," Aya honestly replied. "The universe is vast, and we have many worlds to explore. But I will never forget you." The following night, as Aya had predicted, strange lights appeared in the sky. Many, despite the warning, couldn't resist and peeked out of the windows or even went outside. They saw 3 pulsating, glowing spheres hanging over the distant forest, emitting a soft bluish glow. Aya had already disappeared from Matryona's house before dawn, taking only a silver chest and a small bundle of gifts. No one saw her leave. By morning, The strange lights had vanished, and rumors began to spread throughout the village. Some swore they saw Aya rise into the air in a beam of light. Others told stories of a fiery orb descending into the forest and taking her. And Prochor, who had gone hunting, claimed he saw strange creatures in the distance surrounding Aya and taking her with them. But no one knew for sure. Igor Stepanovich assembled a search party to check the place where the lights were seen, but they found nothing unusual. No traces of fire, no flattened grass, nothing that would indicate the landing of any craft. Gradually, life in the village returned to its usual rhythm. Autumn came, the harvest began, and preparations for winter were made. The story of the woman from the stars became one of the legends told on long winter evenings. However, something had changed. Now, the people of Mikhailovka often looked up at the night sky, wondering which of the twinkling points might be the new home of their strange guest. And little Vanya, when he grew up, became one of the first in those parts to study astronomy and dedicated his life to studying the stars. And always around his neck hung the strange crystal, glowing in the dark with a mysterious purple light, just like the eyes of the one who had given it to him. Perhaps somewhere out there, among the countless stars, she also remembers the village lost in the Siberian taiga, and the boy who wasn't afraid to befriend a guest from space. Even today, local residents can still tell the story of the woman from the distant stars who lived for a short time in the village. You know, Vanya, sometimes the truth sets you free. I'm tired of hiding, and I've realized I can trust you. Do you miss home? Very much, she answered quietly. I have family there, friends, a different life. And what will happen when your people come? Will they take you? Yes. Aya nodded. I have to go back. Will you tell them about us? About our village? Of course, she smiled. I'll tell them about the brave boy Vanya, who wasn't afraid to befriend a strange woman. The boy straightened up proudly. Can I give you something to remember me by? Something from your planet. Aya thought for a moment, then took a small pendant with a glowing stone from her neck. Here, this is a crystal from my homeland. It doesn't have any special properties, just a beautiful mineral. Keep it and remember me. Vanya carefully accepted the gift, his eyes shining with delight. By the end of summer, Aya had noticeably changed. She began to go into the forest alone more often, returning agitated and staring at the night sky for long periods. Are they coming for you soon? Igor Stepanovich asked one day, noticing her unease. Yes, she nodded. The signal is getting stronger. They're close, in your solar system. And how will it happen? Will they land right here in the village? No. Aya shook her head. That would be too noticeable. They'll send a small shuttle to pick me up, in a deserted place. I'll have to meet it alone. The news of Aya's impending departure spread quickly through the village. Many didn't believe she would actually fly to the stars, thinking it was just a story. Others began preparing to say goodbye to the guest they had grown fond of. Matryona, with whom Aya had been staying, secretly prepared some treats: dried berries, honey, jam. "Take it with you on your journey," she said, wiping away a tear. T. Not a stranger any more. Aya accepted the gifts with gratitude, though she knew she wouldn't be able to take much with her.